But because they weren't able to use the defense they wanted to use, their best defense was the state's incompetence. And it seems like that wasn't enough. Let's calm this thing down and get the perspective that everybody needs right now. So welcome to the point where everything said is alleged. Please do your own research, form your own opinion, and let me know that opinion, because this is an open discussion channel where we try to be fair. And if more fair coverage on this story and others is something you're lacking, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below, because Richard Allen has been found guilty on all charges. The fact is, regardless of what verdict the jury came back with, people were going to be upset. And rightfully so, because the state did an absolute crap job proving this case. That's the reality. They're the ones who need the blame. And in a lot of ways, I feel like they set a precedence here, sending that man to prison before he was found guilty. And that's just absolutely concerning to me. Now, I would like to say that we all heard and saw what went on in the courtroom, but the fact remains everybody was getting their information from a different source. The big question right now is really what did them in. To me personally, and this is just me personally, the evidence the state had really wasn't much, with the exception of that van, and I would wonder if that van statement was what did it. Now, the state said only the suspect would know the van showed up when the van showed up, while the defense said Brad Weber wasn't there when he said he was there. Another concerning thing was the cell phone, the fact that they got all those electronic devices but didn't get that device from 2017. Now, it's my understanding that Richard Allen's phone had the data from the 2017 phone in it, and while it's not terribly uncommon to have a particular device not in your home when you're no longer using it, they were able to get a large number of electronic devices. But within all those electronic devices, they didn't find anything linking Richard Allen to any one of these victims. Now, the validity of the round found at the scene is really a matter of perspective, because I have seen individuals within my comment section bring up the point that that round was his. It was proven in court that it was his, while other individuals say it wasn't because they had to fire that round to get a match. But honestly, if I had to think out loud about what probably did him in, I'd have to go back to those confessions. Those confessions where he said he did what he did probably are what did him in, because they had over 60 of them to go off of. Now, I believe there is a school of thought out there by a large number of people who say an innocent person never confesses to a crime they didn't commit, regardless of the amount of stress they're under. And while there is ample data that can prove long-term solitary confinement can cause issues with somebody mentally, I think that data isn't necessarily widely known. And in a lot of ways, it's very possible, it is absolutely 100% possible that Richard Allen would be found not guilty if they didn't have these confessions. There may be a lot of people right now who say the jury got it wrong, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think we can blame them for anything. I think they looked at all the evidence they could, or at least what was presented to them, and made a determination based off that evidence. They deliberated for a long time. It seems like they considered everything possible, and their decision is their decision. There is a piece of me that does wonder, though, for those jurors who get back on their phones and get back on the news and start reading reports and looking at all this stuff, how many of them are going to be angry when they find out all the stuff that was withheld from them? That is a real legitimate question only a juror could answer, and if one gives an interview, I hope that's a question they get asked. I am glad, at least to a degree, the families can get some closure, at least temporarily. What they've went through and the time it's gone on, I am sure has been nothing but stressful for all those individuals. But notice I said their closure will be temporarily. I 100% believe, and I'm almost certain, Richard Allen's going to appeal this thing, and I personally believe that appeal will be granted. Now that's just a guess, that's just speculation. I'm not an expert, and if you disagree, you can let me know down in the comments below. But Judge Gull ran this courtroom in a way I've never seen before. I mean, think about it for a second. We had no cameras showing us what was going on inside the courtroom. All of us had to depend on somebody who was sitting in the court, taking notes and coming back and reporting what they saw. The exhibits that were presented at trial were only able to be viewed by legacy media, not the general public. And that's just absolutely crazy to me. I said from the beginning that I thought the defense was going into this thing with one hand tied behind their back. And all things considered, they did pretty well. But because they weren't able to use the defense they wanted to use, their best defense was the state's incompetence. And it seems like that wasn't enough. But my thoughts on the whole situation is this. I don't feel like we got justice because I don't feel like we got answers. And a lot of that was due to a lack of transparency and potential shady behavior. I didn't go into the start of this trial absolutely believing that Richard Allen wasn't guilty of this crime. But as that trial went on, I had more and more reasonable doubt on whether he did it or not. Now, there are people out there who will say they had a gut feeling Richard Allen did this even though the state failed to prove it. But just because the state did a bad investigation or some type of botched investigation, that doesn't mean Richard Allen needs to get off scot-free. I'm not here to say they're wrong and I'm right, but for me personally, if the state fails to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, that means that individual cannot be charged with that crime. But we're all individuals with our own personal perspective, and clearly there were people on that jury who disagreed with what I said. With what's available, do I believe Richard Allen did this? No. But that's just my opinion. I hope we don't have some sort of precedent set where we can put people in prison while they're awaiting trial, especially solitary confinement. I think this will get appealed, and I hope it does, and I hope that appeal is granted so maybe we can move forward with an actual trial. But I hate the fact the family's going to have to suffer through all this stuff again if that appeal is granted. I also think one of the biggest victims in this case is Richard Allen's wife. She has suffered for years dealing with this stuff and then had to suffer all throughout this trial. And while Abby and Libby do deserve justice, everybody needs to understand she didn't ask for any of this. And I don't think a lot of people are considering what she's going to have to go through all over again when this thing goes back to trial. Once again, that's if that appeal is granted. I can honestly say after reading that verdict, I'm not shocked. I was surprised, but I'm not shocked. And in a lot of ways, that's pretty sad when you think about it. I don't think any of us can sit here and say that any of those investigators did a rock-solid job. I don't think any of us can say that those investigators examined all possible avenues and chased down all leads. If what I heard in the courtroom's true, a lot of those individuals need to be ashamed. That's just how I feel about it. But for now, Richard Allen is found guilty. That's just the truth. Everybody needs to understand it. And we'll see what happens next. And no, I'm not taking any of this personal as if I was wrong or I should have been right. I had questions. I still don't have answers for those questions, and I think a lot of y'all can agree with that. And this may just end up being a situation where the state got it wrong, but somehow they're still able to get it right all at the same time. Y'all be safe now.